Since Force Awakens release, there's been a ton of criticism about the character of Rey, saying that she's a Mary Sue, that she's overpowered, and she has skills totally unrealistic and out of proportion to her backstory. Is that true, or are people just giving her the same kind of treatment that they gave Furiosa back when Mad Max Fury Road came out? Well, let's see if we can find out. First off, not everybody knows what a Mary Sue is. I mean, I never heard of it at all until Max Landis tweeted about it and it kind of became a thing. So for everyone who's in the same boat as me, let's first take a look at the criteria of what makes a Mary Sue so we know what we're talking about. The term Mary Sue appeared first off in a Star Trek fan fiction story called A Trekkie's Tale, introducing a 15-year-old female member to the crew of the Enterprise named Mary Sue, who quickly outperforms all the other members of the crew. She outspocs Spock, proving that her logic is better than his. She's the one woman who's immune to Kirk's charms. You get the idea. She was unrealistically gifted and in the end single-handedly saves the Enterprise before dying a hero. The character was actually created as a parody of other fanfiction writing and stories. As with a lot of fanfiction, the writer usually creates like an idealized version of themselves and then inserts them into the universe. So basically, to be a Mary Sue, or a Gary Stu, that's the male version, you need to be perfect and flawless, you need to outperform all the established characters with little to no explanation, and you have unrealistic abilities that are not supported by solid backstory. I want to stress that the negative connotations that come with the term Mary Sue is not just because a character's good at stuff, because of course they're good at stuff. That's why they're in a movie, is because they're good at stuff. The negative connotations instead come from the character being badly written, that the backstory doesn't explain why they're so good. They're just good because they just are. Take Batman for example. He's a character that is the best at everything in the world apparently, but that doesn't make him a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu, because they gave him a backstory saying that he spent years traveling around the world, learning all these different skills, explaining that he's a billionaire so that's how he can afford all these fancy gadgets, and why he doesn't have to work in a day job so he can spend that time learning his detective and forensic skills. All of his abilities are explained in his backstory. And the same with Furiosa, Hit Girl, Catwoman, Wonder Woman. They all have backstories explaining where their skills come from and why they're so good at what they do. So let's look at Rey and see if she fits the Mary Sue criteria. Is she as perfect and flawless as people claim? Well, I've watched The Force Awakens through and I've made a detailed list of all the things that she does, especially when she saves other people as opposed to people saving her, as well as whenever she makes a mistake or is in a position of vulnerability. And the results are, she only makes one mistake in the whole movie, she is saved by other people 2 times, and she's in a position of vulnerability another 2 times. First, the mistake. When the pirates are surrounding Han and Chewie on his ship, she pulls out a fuse intending to shut the doors so that she separates Han and Chewie from the pirates, but she accidentally pulls the wrong fuse and releases the Wrath Stars. That's a pretty big mistake actually, because not only does it almost get Finn killed, but because it also subjects us to one of the most pointless sequences in the movie. But that's the only actual mistake she makes in the whole movie. And even then she quickly corrects it by finding the right fuse and in the process saving Finn's life from the Wrath Star. The 2 times that she is saved by other people, rather than the other way around, is when Chewie picks up both her and Finn at the end of the movie, and when Finn shoots a single TIE fighter that's chasing them the first time they fly the Millennium Falcon. Now, Chewie picking her up in the Falcon to get off the planet before it blows up, that's a legitimate save. But Finn shooting the TIE fighter, not quite so much. I mean, technically he is saving himself as much as he is her, since they're both in the Millennium Falcon, so it's not exactly the same. Plus, it's also worth noting that after he shoots down the first TIE fighter, the swivel gun jams in place so that he can't move it to shoot again. So what does Rey do? She pulls off a spectacular maneuver, spinning around, flying upside down in a big loop, and manages to line up the shot for him so perfectly that all he needs to do is pull the trigger. How in the name of the Force did she do that? Even Poe Dameron would have a hard time doing something like that. And he's supposed to be the best pilot in the galaxy. And on top of that, Rey specifically states that she has never flown the Millennium Falcon before. Yet she can do that on her very first attempt. Sorry Poe, doesn't look like you'll be the best pilot in the galaxy for much longer if she can do stuff like that. Yes, I know she is force sensitive, so that's probably how she was able to line up a shot like that, through the force, but don't worry, we'll be getting to that. But you remember how Luke was force sensitive and also a pretty solid pilot in A New Hope. And we see some of his skills as a pilot in the Death Star run at the end of the movie. And indeed, he did do very, very well, considering that he had only piloted ships around Tatooine before that. But as good as he was, he didn't do it alone. He was supported by a whole squadron of other pilots who literally died in his place, by the way, to set him up for the shot. And even then, Han had to come in and save him at the last second. See, Luke was good, but he was not unrealistically good. He didn't just fly up to the Death Star totally by himself, take out everyone and blow it up. He had the Force guiding him to make the shot, but he still needed help in order to make it. See, that's realistic. And do you remember what Han said to Luke?
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dust and crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and then it'd end your trip real quick, wouldn't you?
But Rey seemed to have no problem navigating through hyperspace, which is particularly strange since she also states she has never left Jakku before. And if she's never left the planet before, then she's never flown at hyperspace, so how does she know how to do that? The Force, I guess? Now granted, the only time the Falcon does actually fly at hyperspace, when she's at the controls, Chewie is also the co-pilot, so you could maybe say that it was Chewie doing it, not her. But even if that is the case, with her backstory, the whole concept of hyperspace should be entirely foreign to her. The point of the hyperdrive, as I understand it, is to fly from one star system to another. It's not generally used to fly around the planet. So if she has never left the planet before, she's never used a hyperdrive before. In fact, she would never have even turned one on before. Yet despite the fact that she has never even turned one on, not only is she able to repair the one on the Falcon, but she actually repairs it better than Han Solo can, who is a guy who's been using it almost his entire life. Remember, one of the traits of a Mary Sue is that they're inexplicably better than the already established characters. And when she meets Han Solo and Chewie, she immediately starts finishing their sentences, one-upping every decision, and basically being better than Han in almost all of the ways that make him special, just like the actual Mary Sue character did with Kirk, Spock, and Scotty. That is textbook Mary Sue writing. Again, remember, her being good at stuff is not the problem, it's her being better with little to no explanation as to why. If Poe Dameron was able to pilot the Falcon better than Han Solo, that'd make sense, because he's got a backstory explaining that he's flown for most of his life and he's already built a reputation as one of the best pilots in the galaxy. But Rey has not.
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dust and crops, boy.
But apparently it is like scavenging for parts. And let's talk about that. Many of you might be saying, well, wait a minute, Rey's a scavenger, so she should know how to fix things and repair things. That's kind of what she does, right? Is it though? Let's think about this for a second. Her life as a scavenger, as it's portrayed in the movie, consists of taking stuff apart, cleaning it, and then selling it for food. That's pretty much it. So she should know about how to take stuff apart, but not so much about how to put stuff together again. So put simply, if she's a scavenger, then she should not really know how to build or repair things. But she does have a quick sort of throwaway line that indicates that Unkar Plutt did put her to work on repairing the Falcon because she seems to know about what repairs have been done. In exactly what capacity she was working on it, we don't know because they never really say. But okay, let's run with that. Let's say she's also an engineer. But if she's an engineer that's so gifted she can repair a hyperdrive even though she has never even turned one on before, then why does she have to resort to scavenging to survive? With those kind of skills, she should have no problem providing for herself. People would probably be competing to actually hire her. She'd probably even own scrapyards for herself. Why is she living in a wrecked Imperial Walker? She's that good, she could practically build her own Imperial Walker. The point I'm trying to make here is that if she's a scavenger, she shouldn't know how to repair stuff. And if she's an engineer, then she shouldn't have to resort to scavenging in order to survive. Again, weak backstory. That's a telltale sign of a Mary Sue. Rey can even understand Chewie's language. How? How does she know how to speak Wookiee? She lives on a desert planet. There's no Wookiees out there. Why would there be? They're covered in thick hair. Creatures covered in thick hair do not want to live in a desert. And no, Wookiees would not show up at her scrapyard to buy stuff either, because apart from Chewie himself, Wookiees barely even use technology. They live in trees on Kashyyyk. So how does she even learn a language like that? She'd never come into contact with it. Did she learn it from a book? It's growling. You can't learn growling from a book. But we all know why the movie gave her these abilities to do these things. We know. It's because they want to end the movie with her basically taking Han Solo's place on the Millennium Falcon. And to do that, she needs to be able to understand Chewie, she needs to be able to fix the ship, and she needs to be able to navigate through hyperspace. So they just gave her those abilities, even though it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever with the backstory that they've given her, which is known as bad writing. And a Mary Sue is a product of bad writing. That's why Mary Sues typically show up in fan fictions more often, because fan fictions are generally not written by professionals. But this isn't a fan fiction, this is supposed to be a major motion picture. Let's move on to the instances when she was in a position of vulnerability. The only 2 times that she's vulnerable in the movie is when she runs away after touching Luke's lightsaber and having that vision, and the first time that she faces Kylo Ren, when he freezes her with the Force. Her freaking out after getting that weird vision was great. It's the first time in the movie that we see her in a position that spins her off her axis a bit. Everything that happens before that she has no trouble dealing with, but now we finally get to see some actual humanity in her. But that first time that she faces Kylo and gets like frozen is fantastic. This is the least Mary Sue-ish that she is in the whole movie. Not just because it shows her vulnerable, but because it fits in with her backstory and the level of knowledge that she has for going up against a Force user like that. Of course she's going to be outclassed by Kylo Ren, she's never faced anyone like him before. She might be able to beat up a couple of thugs in the marketplace on Jakku, but Kylo Ren is just out of her league. In the same kind of way that Vader was out of Luke's league in Empire Strikes Back. So this is exactly how it should go based off what we know of her. So full credit to the movie for that. But this is soon overshadowed by their second confrontation. Now let's not go into all the details of the second fight between Rey and Kylo Ren, it's been talked to death. And it's a bottomless pit of circular logic that can potentially consume your entire brain. The basic problem that it boils down to, for people who don't like that scene, is how quickly she is able to master the Force. But is it really that quick? Well, since Rey is basically Skywalker 2.0, let's compare her to Luke. In the scene where Rey mind tricks the guard to let her go, from the time that the idea first occurs to her to do that, to the time when the mind trick actually works, is a total of 56 seconds. Now the first time that we see Luke Skywalker using a Jedi mind trick is in Return of the Jedi. Not until the 3rd movie in the series does he actually succeed at using a Jedi mind trick, when she masters it in 56 seconds. Moving things around with the Force is basically the Jedi's bread and butter. And the first time that Luke manages this is in Empire Strikes Back, when he pulls the lightsaber out of the snow when he's hanging upside down in the Wampa Cave. And he really had to struggle hard to reach that. Rey, on the other hand, she doesn't just grab the lightsaber, but she grabs it from halfway across the forest while another Force user is also trying to grab it. So she basically wrestles it out of his grasp as well, and almost takes off Kylo Ren's head in the process. And bear in mind, she only started using the Force 24 minutes ago. It took Luke until the second movie before he could do that. The fact that she can do these things at all without any training whatsoever is already far-fetched enough, but that she can instantly do them better than Luke could at the end of the original trilogy is just insane. She even masters abilities that we never even see Luke having to contend with. Remember, a Mary Sue has unrealistic abilities that are not backed up by solid backstory and can outperform established characters with little to no explanation. And considering that a lot of Rey's backstory so far is unknown to us as it's a mystery, yeah, she's basically a textbook Mary Sue. In fact, she's a Mary Sue even more so than the actual original Mary Sue that coined the phrase. Because at least with that character, they established that she went through Starfleet Academy, where they actually teach her all that kind of space stuff, plus she's half Vulcan and they're already super smart. And remember, the original Mary Sue was a parody of these kinds of characters that you find in fan fiction. So Rey is a more exaggerated Mary Sue than the already exaggerated parody was. But here's kind of where it's unfair to call Rey a Mary Sue, because the whole point of Rey is that her past is a mystery. We don't know who her parents are, we don't know where she was born, we don't know how she ended up on Jakku. So in that sense, it's kind of unfair to call her a Mary Sue because we don't know about her backstory, because we're not supposed to know about her backstory. And if in the next movie they reveal something like maybe she did actually get some Force training as a kid, and that Kylo Ren accidentally activated it when he was probing her mind, that would basically fix every single problem that the character has. So as much as I hate to say this for movies, we kind of need to wait and see. And I know that's usually such a cop-out with movies where you have to say, well, to be explained in the sequel, but I think in this case it's okay because the story is written as a whole new trilogy. It's not just supposed to be one self-contained story. So I think it's okay to say that with Rey, that we'll probably get an explanation in the sequel. But if we don't, yeah, Mary Sue. None of us can be sure what will happen with Rey in episode 8, but something I think we can be sure of is why J.J. Abrams wrote the character of Rey in the way that he did. Remember after he made Star Trek Into Darkness, he copped a whole bunch of criticism for how he treated the female characters in that. One was just there to stand around in her underwear, while the other one spent the whole movie nagging her boyfriend about not sharing his feelings. So I think when J.J. Abrams came to Force Awakens, he thought, well, now I'm going to do the female character right. And he simply overcompensated way too much. He made her too strong, he made her too perfect, he made her too flawless. So ironically, his effort to avoid criticism for his handling of his female character ended up getting him even more criticism than he got the last time. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this, regardless of what side of the fence you sit on. But it's fun to talk about, and it's fun to have friendly discussions in the comments section. So if you haven't seen the partner video to this one, click right here to watch Is Force Awakens Really a Remake? Or if you haven't yet seen my friends over at Undeleted Scenes, you can click here for a really funny animated skit that they did of Kylo Ren, General Hux, and Captain Phasma fleeing from the Starkiller base and the conversation that happened. I actually got to voice General Hux in this, and these guys are real funny, really hilarious. Check them out and subscribe to their channel because these guys are like the next How It Should Have Ended guys. So I'm Bandit, this is Bandit Incorporated, and until next time I will see you guys in the comments. So what happened to you down there? Was the Resistance secretly training a bunch of Jedis and they attacked you all at once?
Not exactly.
Well then, what happened to you?
I kinda lost a fight to that girl we captured. Okay, stop laughing or I'll force choke you both.